Ark of the Covenant. And when it was known in Hebrew as the Shekinah. There's a little demon in here, a little mosquito, but that's okay. It's a matter of time before his days get numbered. But getting back to the spiritual things in life. By the way, if ever you have to kill a mosquito that's biting you or transmitting some sort of crazy disease through his venom or any other pest, is it morally okay to kill it? People have asked me. And naturally, the simple answer is, well, yeah, because we don't serve them, Plus, anyway, the answer I heard from a monk was this. You kill it, and when you do so, you say, rest in peace. This way, you send it on its way with a smile.
Bless the Lord, O my soul, and all that is within me, bless his holy name.
Hi, thanks for tuning in to Armor of God again. And as always, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us. And hopefully you'll learn something useful here. In the previous video, it was a very long compilation, and even though a lot of the clips in that compilation you've listened to before, I still hope all of you have learned a lot from that video. But this video is not going to be that long, still though I hope you'll learn something here. Anyway, now, let's get to the first one here. Okay.
You had in the Old Testament, and at the time of Christ, what's called the Talmud. It's not the Bible. It's an ancillary work that's supposed to help guide them in their conduct of life. But if you read the Talmud, you'll be shocked what it contains. It's nothing like the Bible. And many of them were espousing these crazy teachings. Another one is called the Kabbalah. In English, they say Kabbalah. In Hebrew, it's Kabbalah. And the chief chapter of that is called the Zohar. I studied that with a rabbi for 1 year. I took a course of Jewish mystical theology, reading the Talmud, the Torah, the Kabbalah. The Kabbalah is really the spiritual, mystical work of the Jews. And, of course, we reference the Mishnah. Now, you'll be surprised what's in the Zohar. It talks about compromising with the devil. I'm not making this up. So there's some weird teachings in there, right? And therefore, Jesus, when he issued these 7 woes to the scribes and Pharisees, it was because they were deliberately misinterpreting him. They didn't have to do that, but they wanted to. Not because they were ignorant or uneducated or lacked the skills, no. It was because they were worshiping another God. So they're already closing the door in Jesus' face. They didn't want that kind of God. They wanted their kind of God, you see? So they were already judging him, not based so much on his words. They were using his words to condemn him, trying to trap him. They were already closed from the beginning to his word. They wanted their God. Jesus issued 7 woes to them, basically saying they're headed for hell. In many occasions, called them a tomb of dead man's bones, that they build the graves of the prophets, and that they will be there doing their, he said their father is the Satan. He called their synagogue the synagogue of Satan. Why was that? Because at the time of Christ, they had the Hebrews, the Jews. There were good Jews and there were bad Jews, just like today. And you had the bad Jews worshiping Baal, which is Satan. This goes all the way back, even before Moses, before they built the golden calf, way before that. You have the sons of Noah already. One of them went in the wrong direction. And they were worshiping Lucifer.
For the next clip is of Father Winston, who's an exorcist based in the Philippines. And for this one, I decided to share this clip of Father Winston here because someone asked about the third eye the other day, and since we just completed the short series videos of Father Joseph Iannuzzi recently, I thought it's a good idea to include Father Winston's explanation in regards to the third eye here. On the other hand, after giving it much thought, I've already completed my list of questions for Father Winston, so hopefully all goes well. I will let you know on the community post once I've received any update from Father Winston. So now, the third eye. Let's get to the problem and start with what happens when someone opens this third eye.
The occult third eye is fundamentally the organ for divination, much like the eyes are the organ for seeing. Why? Because the occult third eye perceives invisible things. Just like the eye, our biological eyes, perceives material or physical things. How well developed the third eye is based on the power that it is able to manifest. It starts with sensing feeling without seeing. And then afterwards, you hear voices. And then you smell unusual odors. Then finally, you see frontally or you see auras. Oftentimes, we seem to see things on the periphery of our eyes. But when you see frontally, then it means that your third eye is fairly well developed. And the highest form of the manifestation of the third eye is to be able to talk or communicate with the spirit world. The spirit world of the fallen spirits, not the world of God, of the holy angels, and the saints.
And that information is shared here not because I'm telling you to try to open the third eye or anything like that. That's not the intention here. Anyway, the next clip of Father Winston here is about how to open and close the third eye.
How is the third eye opened? First, inherited from ancestors with an open third eye. The spirit goes down because of the consecration made. If the person, the occult practitioner, has used the power several times and profited from that power, then it goes into the bloodline. The demon goes into the bloodline. It can also happen by accident through multiple contacts with the occult, an occult practitioner, or with someone whose third eye is open. Multiple contacts with the occult or with someone whose third eye is open. Always in contact with a person whose third eye is open. And the third one is through trauma. By way of a trauma, either due to a near-death experience or strong emotional shock. So the third eye is opened in three ways. You inherit it, you accidentally open it through constant interaction with occult practitioners, or by way of a trauma to a near-death experience or strong emotional shock. And the fourth one is you induced. You want to have that power through a deliberate desire to have it opened or through occult means or ritual. If you can open it, it can also be closed. There is a caveat. If you open it and it does get opened, you relate to the spirit of evil, the spirit of divination. And you cannot close it on your own because now one is bonded to the spirit of divination. The only way to close it is to return back to God. A true conversion. Why? Because when we open ourselves to the occult, we forsake our baptismal vows. You reject all His works and empty promises. Now knowing that the spirit of divination is not from God, then we relate back to the evil spirits. So how is it closed? One, first and foremost, a sincere, definitive, honest to goodness renouncement of the spirit of divination and all the powers given by these demons. If the person has become a medium, a demon that comes in and out will be commonly encountered and the battle will be long. Because if we have given our bodies to be used by the spirits, you cannot renounce. Why? Because the spirits will prevent you from renouncing. Total renouncement of the spirit of divination and its powers is absolutely necessary, without which no liberation can be achieved. In expelling the spirit of divination in a person deeply ingrained in the practice of the occult, demonic possession will most probably occur if the person has not devoutly prepared spiritually. You cannot go to a priest and say, "Father, I want to close my occult third eye." Just like that. You have to undergo a process of conversion, a true turning back to God. It's not a magical thing, because if one has been using the power for so long or deeply ingrained in the practice of the cult, then possession will definitely occur. How is it closed? Exorcism of the spirit of divination and the occult third eye. While using the oil of catechumens or blessed oil in the locality of the third eye, and if necessary, the senses that have been affected by it, eyes, ears, nose, lips, chest, hands, feet, and this is to be done by a priest. Then you now consecrate. Remember, the psychic abilities have been bonded to the unclean spirits. And if one has the psychic abilities present and you expel the unclean spirits, those psychic abilities now must belong to God. And we do this by consecration of the ability to the Blessed Mother. The priest will also seal the location of the third eye and other senses with holy chrism as a sign of the reconsecration of the person back to God. Remember that when we attach ourselves to the spirit of divination, to the use of the occult third eye, we rebuke or we forsake our baptismal promises and our faith as well. And therefore, we need to be reconsecrated back to God.
For the next clip has something to do with a video of someone called Brandon Biggs, who's supposedly prophesizing the assassination attempt on President Trump before. I didn't want to cover it back then because it was trending back then, and I do not want to cover things for the sake of trend or just because it's the latest hot news. The intention has always been the same, and that is to learn and educate. And this is a Catholic channel, so I'd like to present what the Church thinks when it comes to things like this.
Now, I said this before and I'll say it again, and I'm not incriminating anyone. I'm just saying it as a matter of fact for the spiritual welfare of your own benefit, of your own soul. For every one prophet God sends, that's true, Satan will send 10 that are false. How does he send them? Some are deliberate in their deception, but I believe the majority are deceived. The majority are thinking that their own entering into the state is God bringing them there and only God talking, and that's not the case. God may inspire. This is not the same thing as a substantial locution. Inspiration is not a substantial locution. So formal locutions and successive locutions are inspirations. They're nothing more. And they're receiving in these inspirations both messages, patterns of thought, ideas, words from God, from themselves sometimes, and even from the devil. And they can't distinguish between the three because they don't have someone in whom they confide. If you ask these seers, who is your spiritual director, they won't give you an answer because they don't have one. That's already a dangerous sign. They're relying upon themselves and they're going to get it wrong every time. A true mystic always has a spiritual guide. You'll find this throughout the history of Christianity, every single time. God has never given the church a prophet or a mystic in the New Testament without giving him a spiritual guide, always a priest. You notice that? Every single time. Because the priests are the ones actually trained in discerning these things and knowing doctrine, what's heresy, what's schismatic, etc. But substantial locution is completely different. You could be talking to someone, you could be playing, you could be recreating, and it hits you. You don't have to dispose yourself, number one. And number two, these substantial locutions, John of the Cross says, enter the substance, hence the word substantial, of the soul, unlike formal and successives that do not enter the substance of the soul. I can go into this more in detail, but I want to limit myself just to that.
Before we get to the second part of this video, I'd like to share this clip of Father Carlos Martins. I think a lot of us here can relate to what Father Martins is sharing here.
I think we've all known in our lives people who, more than anything, they worry. They worry about today, they worry about tomorrow. They're filled with anxiety. We've also known people that are pessimists, that whatever the day brought, they're always looking towards the negative side of it. They are judging tomorrow through a lens of negativity. That they are not a people whom we look to and see a hope bursting forth from them. And we know people that are just brooders who look at what's happened in the past and they're constantly living in the midst of the bad things that happened at one time. They bring up the past in arguments. You know, you did this, and then that happens over and over and over again. Right? All of these things are a form of mental illness. Each one is its own mental illness. Right? Paul provides a recipe for good mental health. It is a recipe. And nowhere in the scriptures is there such a clear recipe for tranquility of thought What he writes is this: finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is gracious, if there is any excellence and anything worthy of praise, think about these things. Right? So he gives 8 qualities to meditate upon, to find the goodness in things. And he says, think about these things. Right? He doesn't say try to think about them. Do your best to think about them. He says think about them, pursue them, push for them. That is a recipe for good mental health. Right? You will be happier if you do this. In every situation, look for these things: what is true, what is lovely, gracious, excellence, honorable, just, whatever is pure. And perhaps my favorite, whatever is lovely, whatever is beautiful. Think about those things. And that is a recipe for a peace within us, a peace that only God can give. And this is a plan that is so succinctly laid out by Paul. It is just profoundly beautiful. Just a wonderful, succinct summary of a plan of life that can bring us into a state of good mental health. And so Paul is, in his day, same as today. I mean, the people in Paul's day were no different than the people today. We're looking for happiness. Right? Human beings are the same in every time and place. We're looking for happiness, we're looking for meaning, we're looking for contentedness. In the midst of that searching that we do, we ourselves are broken. We have the effects of the sin of Adam and Eve within us. We have a propensity. We are bent towards sinning. We have selfishness that we try to overcome. We have scarring within our souls from hurts that we've received in the past. And what Paul is saying is overcome those things by focusing on these qualities. And he says this: and the God of peace will be with you. I mean, nobody could have put it more simply than what Paul does here. This is a path to good mental health.
For the second part of this video, again, what we'd like to do here is to continue sharing the visions of blessed Anne Catherine. And again, we hope you'll enjoy this one too.
I saw the fall of the angels, the creation of the earth and paradise, that of Adam and Eve, and the fall of man. I thought everyone saw this as we do other things around us, and I spoke of it freely to my parents, brothers, sisters, and playmates. I had these visions by night and by day, in the fields, in the house, sitting or walking, and when engaged in all kinds of employments. One day at school, I happened to speak of the resurrection, describing it differently from what we had been taught. I felt certain that everyone knew it just as I did. I did not dream that there was anything peculiar in my account of it. But the children gazed at me in wonder and laughed, while the master reproved me gravely and warned me not to indulge such imaginations. My visions continued, but I kept them to myself. I was like a child looking at a picture book, explaining the pictures in its own way, but not thinking much about their meaning. They represented the saints or scenes from sacred history, sometimes in one way, sometimes in another. They produced no change in my faith. They were merely my picture book. I gazed upon them quietly and always with the good thought, all to the greater glory of God. In spiritual things, I have never put faith in anything but what God the Lord has revealed to the Catholic Church for our belief, whether it be written or not. I have never believed so firmly what I have seen in vision. I looked upon the latter as I devoutly regard, here and there, the various cribs at Christmas. I feel no annoyance at their difference in style, for in each I adore the same dear little infant Jesus. And so it is with those pictures of the creation of heaven, earth, and man. In them I adore God the Lord, the Almighty Creator of heaven and earth. I saw spreading out before me a boundless, resplendent space, above which floated a globe of light shining like a sun. I felt that it was the unity of the Trinity. In my own mind, I named it the One Voice, and I watched it producing its effects. Below the globe of light arose concentric circles of radiant choirs of spirits, wondrously bright and strong and beautiful. This second world of light floated like a sun under that higher sun. These choirs came forth from the higher sun, as if born of love. Suddenly I saw some of them pause, wrapped in the contemplation of their own beauty. They took complacency in self. They sought the highest beauty in self. They thought but of self. They existed but in self. At first all were lost in contemplation, out of self, but soon some of them rested in self. At that instant I saw this part of the glittering choirs hurled down, their beauty sunk in darkness, while the others, thronging quickly together, filled up their vacant places. And now the good angels occupied a smaller space. I did not see them leaving their places to pursue and combat the fallen choirs. The bad angels rested in self and fell away, while those that did not follow their example thronged into their vacant places. All this was instantaneous. Then rising from below, I saw a dark disk, the future abode of the fallen spirits. I saw that they took possession of it against their will. It was much smaller than the sphere from which they had fallen, and they appeared to me to be closely crowded together. I saw the fall of the angels in my childhood, and ever after, day and night, I dreaded their influence. I thought they must do great harm to the earth, for they are always around it. It is well they have no bodies, else they would obscure the light of the sun. We should see them floating around us like shadows. Immediately after the fall, I saw the spirits in the shining circles humbling themselves before God. They did homage to him and implored pardon for the fallen angels. At that moment, I saw a movement in the luminous sphere in which God dwelt. Until then, it had been motionless and, as I felt, awaiting that prayer. After that action on the part of the angelic choirs, I felt assured that they would remain steadfast, that they would never fall away. It was made known to me that God, in his judgment, in his eternal sentence against the rebel angels, decreed the reign of strife until their vacant thrones are filled. But to fill those thrones seemed to me almost impossible, for it would take so long. The strife will, however, be upon the earth. There will be no strife above, for God has so ordained. After I had received this assurance, I could no longer sympathize with Lucifer, for I saw that he had cast himself down by his own free, wicked will. Neither could I feel such anger against Adam. On the contrary, I felt great sympathy for him because I thought, it has been thus ordained. Immediately after the prayer of the faithful choirs and that movement in the Godhead, I saw below me, not far from and to the right of the world of shadows, another dark globe arise. I fixed my eyes steadily upon it. I beheld it as if in movement, growing larger and larger, as it were, bright spots breaking out upon it and encircling it like luminous bands. Here and there they stretched out into brighter, broader plains. And at that moment I saw the form of the land setting boundaries to the water. In the bright places I saw a movement as of life, and on the land I beheld vegetation springing forth and myriads of living things arising. Child that I was, I fancied the plants were moving about. Up to this moment there was only a gray light like the sunrise, like early morn breaking over the earth, like nature awakening from sleep. And now all other parts of the picture faded. The sky became blue, the sun burst forth, but I saw only one part of the earth lighted up and shining. That spot was charming, glorious, and I thought, there's paradise. While these changes were going on upon the dark globe, I saw, as it were, a streaming forth of light out of that highest of all the spheres, the God sphere, that sphere in which God dwelt. It was as if the sun rose higher in the heavens, as if bright morning were awakening. It was the first morning. No created being had any knowledge of it, and it seemed as if all those created things had been there forever in their unsullied innocence. As the sun rose higher, I saw the plants and trees growing larger and larger. The waters became clearer and holier. Colors grew purer and brighter. All was unspeakably charming. Creation was not then as it is now. Plants and flowers and trees had other forms. They are wild and misshapen now compared with what they were, for all things are now thoroughly degenerate. When looking at the plants and fruits of our gardens, apricots, for instance, which in southern climes are, as I have seen, so different from ours, so large, magnificent, and delicious, I often think, as miserable as are our fruits compared with those of the south, are the latter when compared with the fruits of paradise. I saw there roses, white and red, and I thought them symbols of Christ's passion and our redemption. I saw also palm trees and others, high and spreading, which cast their branches afar, as if forming roofs. Before the sun appeared, earthly things were puny, but in his beams they gradually increased in size until they attained full growth. The trees did not stand close together. Of all plants, at least of the largest, I saw only one of each kind, and they stood apart like seedlings set out in a garden bed. Vegetation was luxuriant, perfectly green, of a species pure, sound, and exempt from decay. Nothing appeared to receive or to need the attention of an earthly gardener. I thought, how is it that all is so beautiful, since as yet there are no human beings? Ah, sin has not yet entered. There has been no destruction, no rending asunder. All is sound, all is holy. As yet there has been no healing, no repairing. All is pure, nothing has needed purification. The plain that I beheld was gently undulating and covered with vegetation. In its center rose a fountain, from all sides of which flowed streams, crossing one another and mingling their waters. I saw in them first a slight movement as of life, and then I saw living things. After that I saw, here and there among the shrubs and bushes, animals peeping forth, as if just roused from sleep. They were very different from those of a later day, not at all timorous. Compared with those of our own time, they were almost as far their superior as men are superior to beasts. They were pure and noble, nimble and joyous. Words cannot describe them. I was not familiar with many of them, for I saw very few like those we have now. I saw the elephant, the stag, the camel, and even the unicorn. This last I saw also in the ark. It is remarkably gentle and affectionate, not so tall as a horse, its head more rounded in shape. I saw no asses, no insects, no wretched, loathsome creatures. These last I have always looked upon as a punishment of sin. But I saw myriads of birds, and heard the sweetest notes, as in the early morning. There were no birds of prey that I could see, nor did I hear any animals bellowing. Paradise is still in existence, but it is utterly impossible for man to reach it. I have seen that it still exists in all its splendor. It is high above the earth and in an oblique direction from it, like the dark globe of the angels fallen from heaven.
And now, before we get to the end of this video, please allow me to share this clip of Father Joseph Iannuzzi, where he talked a little bit about what happened to the writings of St. Faustina.
Case in point, Faustina. When the church sequestered her work and put it on the index of prohibited books, why did it do so? Because she had a limited education. She had a poor grammar. And when she wrote, it was open to misinterpretation, and it could have been taken out of context. So the church said this is dangerous. Not that it's in and of itself heretical, but it's a danger to be misinterpreted, so let's get it away from the people. Index of Prohibited Books. Now, that's the proper title. Most people don't realize the difference between this distinction I'll share with you today. The church never had an index of condemned books, never existed. It's called prohibited books. What's the difference? Condemned means it's not of God. It's of the devil. That's damnation, condemn, or it's of a bad source. The church never had that list. It had an index of prohibited, meaning we're not saying it's from the devil, we're just prohibiting it because it can be misinterpreted. See the difference?
Well then, that will be all for the video this time. And as always, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us. And hopefully all of you have learned a lot from this video. Remember, if there's any feedback or suggestion, please let me know in the comments below. Anyway, if you like our works and you'd like to support us, I left a link to our PayPal donation in the description box below, and from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for your generous contributions, as well as your support and prayers. And until the next one, Thanks again for watching, and may God bless you.
God trusts you more than you trust him. Let me repeat that. God has given more entrustment to you than you have given to him. He trusts you with your own destiny, with your own decisions, with your own soul, through your own intentions. And you don't even do it. Many of us don't even do that with God. That's how much authority he's given us. And he will respect our intention in everything we do. He won't violate it.